Morning and good afternoon to you all, and welcome to this side event of the UN High-Level Political Forum for Sustainable Development, which is on the topic of building back better through smart investments in development data. And it is co-organized by Paris 21, the UN Statistics Division, the Government of Switzerland, Open Data Watch, and the High-Level Group on Partnerships, Coordination, and Capacity Building. My name is Jure Yada, and I am the coordination lead of the Bern Network on Financing Data for Development, and I will be facilitating this session, which is also an official event of the Road to Bern running up to the 2021 United Nations World Data Forum, which will be co-hosted by the UNSD and Switzerland this October. Now, today's event puts the focus on the critical role of development data to support effective as well as inclusive policymaking, not just so we may build back better from the COVID-19 pandemic, but also so we may continue to make the necessary advances to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And for this to happen, we need high quality, timely, and disaggregated data, and we need to ensure that national statistical systems are adequately resourced so they can deliver on this urgent demand for data that all countries face for evidence-based policymaking in this context. So it's against this backdrop that we will focus our discussions today on the topic of financing, of investing in development data, and in particular, how we can achieve investments that are smarter. And in doing so, we will shift our paradigm to consider more closely how we may innovate, and also how we may collaborate and lead the way to use available resources and partner together for support to statistics more efficiently. And we will hear today about the evolving needs, the innovations, and also the opportunities linked to financing development data from our eminent speakers and panelists. And we will hear about what is new, how are we building the momentum for change, and what are we doing to move forward with specific policy areas such as gender equality. So without further ado, I would like to move and give the floor to our introductory speakers. To all of you in the audience, welcome once again, and please feel free to interact with us in the Q&A chat by submitting your questions and comments, which our colleagues will be monitoring. And please also note that this event will be recorded and a recording will be made available afterwards. So our first intervention is by Her Excellency Aryun Zaya Ayush, Minister of Labor and Social Protection of Mongolia, who has recorded a video statement for us to get us started. And we will put that now on the screen.
Good morning, everyone. I send you all my warmest greetings from Mongolia, where I am recording this video. It is my great pleasure to open this side event of the High-Level Political Forum on building back better through smart investments in development data. This is a crucial topic for my country, and indeed, of course, for all our countries. All of us need accurate, timely, reliable data as evidence to develop, implement, and monitor the policies for a sustainable, resilient recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. While the value of data is not always well understood or even visible, it is not like a vaccine or a new school. We have felt the need for more and better data for policy during the pandemic. I have seen this myself in my work as a Minister of Labor and Social Protection of Mongolia. At the same time, the pandemic has deeply impacted the ability of national statistical systems in the most vulnerable and low-income countries to conduct their core activities, and it has sharpened data inequalities as a result. National budgets for data and statistics have been reallocated, of course, in these difficult times, reduced, and so has development aid. This has put incredible pressure on national statistical offices that are trying to respond to our urgent need for the data on the one side, but on the other side, the pandemic, with even less resources than before. I very much welcome today's event because it brings the focus on one very important message, one that the international community, our community has long recognized, but this is now emerging more critically than ever. The message is this, that in order for data to be the resource we need for sustainable development, we must find better resources, the systems that produce the data. We need to ensure that investments in national statistical systems are stable, smart, and at a scale so that these systems can be strengthened, modernized, and be fit for the purpose. This is the vision at the heart of the Cape Town Global Action Plan for Sustainable Development Data, which we will hear more about during this session. The pandemic has faced us with new challenges, and as budgets are constrained everywhere, we must be determined and creative as members of the international community to find solutions, to learn from each other, solutions that the data can fulfill its potential and as a tool for our sustainable development goals. Today's event will therefore focus on understanding the new needs, new opportunities, new solutions for achieving the smart investments in development data. We need more resources, yes, but we must also make existing resources go further, or be more smarter, more defined. We must enhance the quality, effectiveness, and impact of the funding for the data and statistics. To do so, we need to improve transparency, coordination, partnership, alignment, coordination within the national statistical system and between countries, of course, and their development partners. This is why I am proud that Mongolia is a member of the Bern Network community, and I welcome the network's mission to promote holistic, multi-stakeholder actions to achieve smart investments in development data. I'm especially excited about the new mechanism that the Bern Network has developed to support better decision-making for investment in development data, which you will hear more about this morning. Mongolia fully supports the new platform called Clearinghouse. The Clearinghouse is for financing development data, and the value of it that it can bring to this community is really high. I wish you all a very successful and fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you to Minister Ayush for those introductory remarks. And I would like to now go straight to the next speaker and to welcome and give the floor to Mr. Dominique Favre, who is the alternate executive director for Switzerland at the World Bank. So Dominique, please, you have the floor. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Jorge. I'm very honored to open this HLPF session as a representative of Switzerland. As a donor country, we have indeed a long-standing tradition in supporting data for development and statistical capacity building. Our engagement is guided by 3 major considerations. Firstly, countries have to develop their own pathway and strategies for achieving the 2030 agenda. In doing so, they will have to address and understand the synergies and trade-offs between the SDGs and their own context. This can only be done if they have developed a robust national data and statistical system to monitor their progress. Not an easy task though, as just mentioned now by Her Excellency Minister Ayush, and as we might hear later on from representatives from Rwanda, Palestine, and Colombia. I'm very much looking forward to these discussions. Secondly, our biggest challenge in achieving the 2030 agenda, particularly after the drastic setback of the COVID-19 pandemic, will be to live up to the promise of leaving no one behind. However, any strategy to do so will need disaggregated data, you were mentioning it, Jorge, which make vulnerable population groups visible. I want to quote our Federal Councillor and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ignacio Cassis, with a sentence he made during the opening of the virtual UN World Data Forum in Bern 2020. Only those who are counted count in political decisions. How to count the most vulnerable groups has, by the way, been identified as one of the major challenges when we analyze the entire portfolio of our own, of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, of our own project portfolio on statistics and data for development in the context of the OECD DAC work and on data for development. This gives me maybe the occasion to commend OECD's work on data, to which we are fully committed. And thirdly, sorry, national statistical system and accessible data are an important basis to strengthen the responsibilities between the state as duty bearer and its citizen. Along these three considerations, Switzerland has put a lot of efforts to develop means for better coordinated support to data and an effective support to statistical capacity, inter alia by working closely together with the UN and the World Bank. I am looking thus forward to listening to Francesca Perucci's presentation on the need of data to build back better, as well as to Craig Hammer from the Development Data Group of the World Bank, who will namely speak about the Global Data Facility and hopefully mention this year's excellent World Development Report of the World Bank, which focuses on data for better lives. And ahead of the UN World Data Forum 2021, which will be hybridly taking place this time, beginning of October in Bern, we have set out our objective to bring closer together the development community and the world of statisticians. To start the conversation between those two communities, we have launched the Bern Network as a platform for exchange and innovation, dedicated to explore ways of addressing the financing gap for statistical capacity and data for developing countries. Despite the recognized need to invest in core capacities and the growing recognition of the importance of data, this funding gap has remained high. As traditional instruments, like for instance, multi-donor trust or basket funds for statistical capacity remain difficult to realize, we engage then in a reflection on new and innovative ways to address funding gaps, but also to support better and more targeted way of supporting financing needs. Our journey with the partners from the Bern Network has led us to support the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data, a virtual space that allows for a matchmaking of partners. Jurai will come back to this innovative partnership initiative, I'm sure. I am a big fan of the HLPF because it brings together the actors needed to achieve the Agenda 2030. The UN, for whom I used to work, the World Bank, where I work now, Paris 21, we will hear his executive head, Johannes Jutting, at the end of the event, civil society platforms, private sector representatives, and many more. I am convinced that multi-stakeholder partnerships will enable new and innovative approaches to invest smart in data, to make data accessible, to share it, to use and reuse it in order to be more effective and leave no one behind. It is in this sense that I would like to conclude by expressing my gratitude for opening today's event. I wish you a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dominique, for those warm welcome remarks and for sharing Switzerland's perspective and also highlighting the importance of data to precisely leave no one behind, which is one of the angles we will be looking at in the panel discussion later on during this session. So we heard from both you and also from Minister Ayush that COVID-19 has had a big impact on us all, and especially with investment needs becoming sharper, as of course against the backdrop of resources that are becoming more stretched. And this brings us very nicely to our next speaker, who will help us better understand the state of play currently for financing development data and what new trends and developments are emerging that affect the modernization of national statistical systems, which the Cape Town Global Action Plan for Sustainable Development Data, which we heard in Minister Ayush's remarks, provides a roadmap for. So with this, it is my great pleasure to welcome Ms. Francesca Perucci, who is Assistant Director at the UN Statistics Division, for her scene setting presentation. So please, Francesca, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Jurai, and hello everyone. I'm really pleased to speak at this event today at the High Level Political Forum as we review progress on SDGs and discuss actions to put us back on track to achieve the goals. Data must certainly be playing a central role. We're seriously lagging behind in the implementation of the SDGs, and the pandemic has halted or reversed years or even decades of progress. We have seen for the first time in a generation an increase in extreme poverty, with an additional 120 million people being pushed back into poverty and over 160 million additional people being pushed into hunger. And the pandemic, as we heard from Minister Ayush and other speakers, has also had a devastating impact on statistical operations around the world and on the availability of resources for data and statistics from both the domestic and the international sources. At the same time, though, the pandemic has accelerated a process of transformation of data and statistical systems in countries, with increased adoption of new data solutions and tools, the establishment of new partnerships for data, and overall a much greater reliance on information and communication technology. As a result, priorities have changed. Funding has been affected, and the need for a smarter, more agile and efficient financing system for data and statistics has become more urgent than ever. Because of the restrictions imposed by the pandemic, already as of May last year, 2020, 65% of national statistical offices were closed to all staff or non-essential staff. And although that number decreased over the year, we see now a trend towards going back to closures, and that's because the pandemic has undergone different phases around the world. So up to 33% of statistical offices are still closed. Face-to-face data collection has been halted or partially suspended in many national statistical offices. As of May 21 this year, still 57% of national statistical offices had their data collection, face-to-face data collection operation still suspended. And international support for data and statistics, which has been inadequate for a long time, has been exacerbated by the shortage of resources has been exacerbated by the situation, by the pandemic. As of July last year, 63% of low-income and lower middle-income countries, in the survey that we conducted to national statistical offices with the World Bank and in collaboration with the regional commissions, show that 63% of countries expressed a great need for additional financing because of the pandemic. At the same time, 53% of low-income and lower middle-income countries have seen financing for data decrease because of the pandemic. But more important than that, the needs for support are different now from ever before. For instance, the reliance on digital technology has increased not only to support the remote working, the training, the web-based surveys, but also to benefit from the new data solutions, better integration of geospatial information, more efficient data storage, processing, communication, and new investments are needed to support that development and to support the development of new skills to manage a much more complex data system and broker the new partnerships that we've heard about. So against that background, the high-level group for partnership coordination and capacity building for data for the 2030 agenda has undertaken a new phase of work in the Cape Town Global Action Plan implementation. The Cape Town Global Action Plan was launched in 2017 and represent the roadmap for the evolution of national statistical systems to meet the new data needs, including for the full implementation of the SDGs, and provides a robust framework for international and national efforts to strengthen data and statistical systems. But I also would like to remember that the Cape Town Global Action Plan was part of the General Assembly resolution with which member states approved the SDG indicator framework. So as member states recognized that the SDG indicators were the appropriate framework to track progress, they also recognized that they needed a plan to ensure that countries would have what it takes to produce and use the necessary data. And since the Cape Town Global Action Plan is also in its 5th year of implementation already, this is also an opportune time to rethink some of its priorities. So while progress has been made in its implementation, we've seen that a major stumbling block in many countries has been the lack of necessary resources to modernize and to really address those strategic priorities that are listed in the plan. So the UN Statistics Division, in its capacity as the secretary of the high-level group, together with the World Bank Development Data Group and Paris 21, have established a collaboration to operationalize the Cape Town Global Action Plan, to obtain a better understanding of the new needs and priority to update the plan, and to create the new financing environment to support the implementation of the plan. And this is possible because we have the opportunity now offered by the new Bern Network's Clearinghouse being established by Paris 21, as we heard, and the new World Bank's Global Data Facility. The World Bank's Global Data Facility will aim to scale up support for subnational, national, regional, and global data and statistics priority, while the Bern Network's Clearinghouse for financing development data will provide the necessary timely, accurate, granular information to match the demand and supply of support for data and statistical systems in countries and increase aid efficiency. Integrated within the framework provided by the Cape Town Global Action Plan, the facility and the Clearinghouse will help facilitate the implementation of the plan, while the high-level group, as custodian of the Cape Town Global Action Plan and its possible updates, will continue to provide the useful, important inputs for priority setting. The collaboration among the 3 entities will also benefit from working closely with the UN country offices. Following the UN reform, the UN now has a much reinvigorated system of resident coordinators, now with a data officer in all countries, an opportunity to better coordinate and support national governments in strengthening their data and statistical systems, which is based directly on countries' demands. In addition, a new tool to review countries' priorities and needs is being jointly implemented, again, by the 3 entities together, the World Bank, Paris 21, and the UN Statistics Division. And this is a survey to all countries that is being launched over the next few days to understand priorities and to rethink the way we collaborate and we establish our partnerships to provide the necessary support. So we are confident that this collaboration will help enable a more effective use of existing resources and mobilize additional funds from both domestic and international sources. Thank you so much. Over to you, Joy.
Thank you very much, Francesca, for that presentation, which has really very nicely outlined the framework for collaboration to support the implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan. And you highlighted some very important and interesting numbers I'm sure we'll come back to in the panel discussion. For example, regarding 63% of NSOs that are really in dire need for additional support to modernize and to continue to fulfill their essential functions. So to our audience, we will not be stopping for a Q&A just yet, but if you have any pressing questions or comments for either Francesca or Dominique, please do feel free to submit them in the Q&A chat. So on the topic of new developments and innovations, it is now my great pleasure to give the next presentation, which aims precisely to showcase one such innovation that Francesca and others have just mentioned, which is the Clearinghouse for financing development data. So if I may ask for the slides to be put on the screen, please. Thank you. So as I mentioned, the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data is a project being developed by a multi-stakeholder alliance dedicated to advancing financing for development data. That is called the Bern Network, which we heard in the intervention so far this morning. And the Bern Network was founded, as Dominique said, by Switzerland, and its secretariat is hosted at Paris 21. So what exactly is the Clearinghouse about as a project? We will start, if you don't mind, by sharing a short video with you all to tell you about what this project is and show you how it can help make a difference to achieve smarter investments in development data. So we'll just put a short video on the screen now.
We all need accurate, disaggregated data to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and leave no one behind. But many countries still lack the means to produce and use high-quality data. They need more support. In 2018, global aid for data was only half of what is needed. The COVID-19 pandemic has further threatened progress in data. How can we both increase funding and make it more efficient? Introducing the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data, the world's first online platform for matching supply and demand of financing for statistics. It provides close to real-time information on aid flows and domestic support to statistics, as well as country demand. This helps to target aid more effectively and strengthen coordination among donors and partners. So, how does it work? This is Amir. Amir is helping his ministry budget for SDG monitoring. Thanks to the Clearinghouse, he sees how much aid his country gets and from whom for things like household surveys and censuses. He can also learn how his country's statistical plan matches up against existing funding and international good practices, and how other countries raise and maintain funding for statistics. This is Alice. Alice is writing a project proposal to invest in gender data in Latin America. Using the Clearinghouse, she can quickly see what other donors are funding to build partnerships or access best practices, and identify potential funding opportunities with the biggest impact on women and men in sectors such as health, education, economic livelihoods, or COVID-19. She can also see what other donors are funding to identify potential partnerships or access best practices. The Clearinghouse is being developed by the Bern Network, a global alliance to enhance financing for development data. We invite all members of the development and data communities to support the development of the Clearinghouse and help us put data at the heart of the Sustainable Development Goals. By making financing smarter, we can ensure that every dollar for statistical capacity goes further and leaves no one behind.
I hope you enjoyed that animated introduction to the Clearinghouse. We'll just now pop the slides back on to tell you a little bit more about what we have planned for this project as we move forward. So just to highlight a few points from the video just now, the Clearinghouse and its purpose is very much to achieve change by providing timely information to better match the demand and the supply of statistical support. And it will do so by drawing on data from Paris 21, Bern Network members, and other partners to provide the functionalities that you just heard about in the video. So these include visualizations of funding flows and opportunities to help analyze current and forecasted finance flows for data and statistics, a series of profiles of multilateral, bilateral, as well as philanthropic donors, recipient countries, and specific statistical projects, key advocacy resources and good practices to help make the stronger business case for investing data and statistics, which we heard is a real need that some of our stakeholders are facing, and a dedicated gender channel with all of these elements in it to put a focus on financing for gender data. And I'll come back to this later on. There will also, of course, be a community feature to facilitate interactions and the building of partnerships, which we heard from Dominique and Ayush, and also Francesca is so important for this work to really leverage on the efforts being made. And we're also trying to promote peer learning through this platform. So we're keen that the Clearinghouse is not just an informational tool or an analytical tool, but also develops a community of practice to bring different stakeholders together. Now, I did want to briefly highlight that all of these features respond to a number of needs that we identified together with key partners through a global survey we conducted and also extensive one-on-one consultations and interviews to overcome major obstacles to achieving smarter financing for data. So these include, for example, the need for greater coordination and what is currently a rather fragmented landscape for data financing, easier access to information that is decision relevant, and also, as I said, stronger business cases for investment, among other points. So what will this all look like in practice? Next slide, please. I am very pleased to share with you today for the very first time a series of high fidelity mock-ups of what the platform will actually look like when it is launched in October at the UN World Data Forum. And I will now walk you through a series of these mock-ups to give you a sense of what it will be like to practically use this platform and give you a flavor for what to expect in October. So you can see on the screen here, the landing page for the platform, from where as a user, you can access the different categories of information. So for example, on the supply side, which is funding flows, on demand, which is funding opportunities, the different profiles, the projects, the resources, and also the community forum. So you can see this on the menu at the top. And from the search bar in the middle, you can easily search content by country or region, by policy area, or any other criteria to really zoom in on the different information you're looking for. So to give you a concrete example, if I were a user looking to understand the broad trends in data financing, I would click on the funding flows button, which is at the top left, as I said, to see this page. Next slide, please. Which is the page on funding flows and provides a global overview of near real-time financing flows, including temporal trends in financing, as well as trends by policy priorities, by government sector or statistical activity area, which you can select using the colorful bar you see here on the right. And from here, I can easily use the map in the middle to zoom in on a country and get an overview of financing flows for that specific country. So again, to illustrate, if I wanted to know what the funding flows were for data in Nigeria in the period, let's say from 2015 to 21, I will choose the corresponding time period using the upper right button, which you can see just above the colorful bar. And then I can hover over Nigeria on the map. Next slide, please. And when I do so, I can quickly see an overview of the commitments and the disbursements for this period, both totally and by donors, so both actual and planned support. And I can see a list of the most active donors, which are all displayed in the blue box here. So going back to Amir from the video, let's say if I were using this function, I can quickly see who the major donors are operating in my country if I were looking for that information. And if I were an aid provider, for instance, I could use this drop-down list to quickly see who I might collaborate with in this country if I'm looking to build partnerships. And from here, if you wanted to have further details on a country or a donor, you could quickly and conveniently check this information through the dedicated profiles, which came up earlier in the video. Next slide, please. So you can see an example of one such profile here. So again, going back to our video, if there was Alice looking to put together a gender project and is looking into potential donors for this gender data project, I could go to just such a profile to see an overview of what one specific donor is doing, their strategic priority areas by SDG, by policy sector, and also by statistical activity, and such information as what financing instruments they use, as well as flagship projects and other relevant resources, which can really help me in putting a proposal together, let's say, for this donor. And all of the information on the donor profiles will be directly reported and validated by the donors themselves. Now, it's not up on the screen here, but we will have this information, of course, available on recipient countries through the country profiles, which will include information on domestic and international support for statistics to that country, as well as strategic documents, flagship projects, and other resources. Now, as one final example, I wanted to come back again to Alice, who is interested in developing a gender statistics proposal. So I mentioned the gender channel earlier, and this is a special channel that will bring together all key information on the Clearinghouse and show this information specifically for gender data financing. Next slide, please. So from the landing page, Alice or you as a user would be easily able to access this information on the gender channel by clicking on the In Focus button for gender just below the search bar, which you can see below the yellow button on the far right. Next slide, please. And by clicking on this, you will be taken to the gender channel, where you can select a specific country to understand what the funding flows are, the opportunities, the projects, the resources relating to gender data financing in that country. So again, let's say you're interested in Senegal. you can click Senegal from the drop-down list to filter the information on the gender channel for that specific country. Next slide, please. And from there, you can see the financing for gender by data by SDGs, the top providers in this space, a list of gender data projects, the country's gender data statistics budget, planned projects, and also a function to monitor and understand the results of these investments. And so Alice can find all of this information while she's putting together her project proposal, for example, or just simply to figure out who she can partner with and also advocate for smart investments in gender data by bringing visibility to this information. So this was a quick overview of what it will be like to use the Clearinghouse using these new mockups that we're showing again today for the very first time. And these functions will be available on the prototype that we will be launching of this Clearinghouse platform in October, which brings me nicely to my concluding slide. Next slide, please. What are the next steps? So as you saw, we are in the process of developing the prototype using the mockups you just saw, and we will be testing this with a number of our Bern Network members later this summer to prepare it for its launch at the UN World Data Forum in October. And the prototype will have funding flow and opportunity information on all major aid providers, as well as the IDA eligible countries. And it will have the profiles I showed you just earlier on 5 recipient countries to start with, as well as a handful of donors, in addition, of course, to the gender channel. And we're partnering to deliver all of this information with a number of partners, including UNSD, the World Bank, the OECD, and other members of the Bern Network and beyond. And after this launch, of course, the aim is to scale up this information and the coverage to go beyond what you just saw and to continue responding to the needs being expressed by both the platform users and our partners. So I will stop my presentation here. Thank you for your attention, and please do drop us a line if you'd like to know more or would like to get involved in the Clearinghouse. And again, if you have any questions, please do pop them in the Q&A chat. So now we have set the scene, of course, through our introductory speakers and through this Clearinghouse presentation on what is the status of play, the current state of play for financing for development data, what are the innovations and the framework for collaboration, which moves us very nicely into the panel discussion that will look specifically at the question of better understanding the needs and opportunities, investments in country systems, gender equality, and leaving no one behind. So it is my pleasure to hand over to Ms. Shada Badi, Managing Director of Open Data Watch, who will kickstart and moderate the panel discussion. So Shada, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jurai. And I'm delighted to be moderating this panel discussion. So as Jurai said, the purpose of this panel is to really dive in to the question of how can we achieve a smarter investment in data. And as we have seen, smart investment in this context means that we take advantage of opportunities, we overcome the challenges. And to be smart, you really need access to information. You need to be able to make quick decisions. And therefore, at the center of the smart investment discussion today is really the Clearinghouse. So the purpose of the panel discussion would be to really sort of get from the perspective that we have, very rich perspective from our panelists. And we have, for discussion of the smart investments, we have selected 5 very smart people to be on this panel. Let me quickly introduce our panel. We start with Youssef Murangawa, who is the Director General of National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. And then I'm really pleased and honored to have Ola Awad with us, President of Palestine Central Bureau of Statistics. And she is also the co-chair of the high-level group on partnership, coordination, and capacity building. And we all challenged by acronym for that group, but we call them affectionately HLG. And then we have Juan Daniel Oviedo Arango, who is the Director General of National Administrative Department of Statistics, DANE, Colombia. And then we have Emily Curry-Pryor, who is the lovely executive director of Data2X, which is a very important group in the discussions today because their focus is really on gender statistics and gender data. And then last but not least, we have Craig Hammer, who is the program manager of Development Data Group, World Bank, and the secretary of the World Bank's Development Data Council. But before we go to the question for the panelists, we were wondering if we could really get some views from the audience of this webinar. And we have one question for you that we're going to put up and sort of see what you think of what is the most important in your view to achieve smart financing for development data at the country level. What is the most important? You have to select one out of 4 options. We have one option is effective coordination mechanism. Second is timely information on needs and investment result. The third option you have is more partner collaboration. And the fourth option you have is a strong business case. So if you could vote, and we will be collecting the poll result. Did you all get your poll? Good. Wonderful. So Susan is going to give us the result back at some point. Susan, how are we doing?
We have 60% voted.
Right. So it must be very difficult to choose between those. You know, I think for me, smart is like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So you really, you really don't know whether the smart means coordination, smart means, partnership, or maybe all of it. And that's why it's so complex to make a smart the investment decision. Susan, I think it would be good for you to give us an update or show us the results at this point.
At the moment, we have timely information on needs and investment results at 40% of the vote, followed by effective coordination mechanisms with 26%, then more partner collaborations with 19%, and strong business cases with 15%. And 76% of the audience has voted.
Wonderful. So if I understood you right, the #1 pick is timely information on needs and investment results, correct?
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Okay, well, that's really good. And we will hold on, all the people who voted, please hold on to your #1. And as you hear the panel, see whether your views change at all. So now let's move to our panel discussions. And I'm going to start with you, Youssef, and your views from Rwanda. And the question that I have for you, and thank you, here's the result that we see. Fantastic, thank you. So Youssef, the question that we have for you is, can you tell us about the importance of building domestic political support for data and statistics, so they are sufficiently resourced, in particular, given the downward trends during the COVID-19 pandemic? And if you could also tell us how can Clearinghouse help address these challenges? Over to you, Youssef, for 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shaida. And thank you very much, Paris 21, for this very important topic for discussion. I was looking at how I voted and the results. I think, I don't know whether I'm on the wrong side or the right side, but you'll get my position as I go through the discussion. Building political support is very important. Actually, I think it's one of the most important aspects in financing and resourcing data and statistics. And of course, Shaida, you said about local political support at country level, domestic, but I think they go hand in hand, both domestic and international, especially for low-income countries. We need both. We need both if we are to make progress. Politicians control to a large extent two things that can make or break almost everything. The first thing that they control is development investment priorities. The priorities are normally controlled to a large extent by the politicians. And they also control the resources that go towards those investments. So it's very important that we get the support from politicians. And going back to the poll, and here you start understanding how I voted, we need to have a very strong business case or business cases to put forward to the politicians so that they buy in. It's very important that we have very good business cases and we get buy-in from the politicians. Having a business case alone is not enough. We have to have buy-in. And almost everything that we get depends on the business case that we put forward and whether or not we get buy-in. If we have both, for sure, we will have resources for statistics. Now, there are two issues, two very important issues, especially with getting support from politicians. The first issue is whether the politicians understand or they see statistics and data as a resource that can facilitate their work. This is something that we always struggle with. And I think with times like, for example, now with challenges of COVID-19 and other global challenges, we can't be sure that 100% they believe that statistics and data is a resource that can be very useful to their work. To some extent, we think that some politicians might actually look at statistics and data as a cost that they don't understand. They don't understand the utility of statistics and data. And for us to overcome that, we need to do a lot of engagement. We need to do a lot of engagement with politicians. We have to do a lot of explaining what we do. We have to align our work with priorities that on the ground. We have to do so many things. We have to produce relevant statistics and on time. And we have to be consistent in doing this. The second important issue is about trust. Do the politicians trust the work that we do? Politics is very tough. Politics is very tough. There are always around 2 sides of it, 3 sides of it, 5 sides of it. And it's very important that as statisticians, we portray ourselves as professional and impartial. And we have to sustain that so that in addition to politicians understanding what we do, they should also trust in the work that we do. They should trust that the work we do is correct, that we get the facts correctly. They should not see us as advocates of certain issues. They should not see us as activists. You know, it's very simple to have information and you work with the information to advocate for something or being an activist. So how we balance that, providing the information, but still not becoming an activist. And the final important thing is we have to connect with the public. The statistics that we have to connect with the public, because if we connect with the public, we connect with the politicians. So I think those are the most important things that I wanted to say today. And of course, the clearinghouse is very important. The clearinghouse allows for information about what is happening, for transparency, for the possibilities of mobilizing stakeholders, and also resolving gaps where we see gaps. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Yusuf. I think that's a really important point. And I think the audience are also watching who voted, maybe change their mind after your talk, that the importance of making a business case and putting value and trust at the center of your business case. That's really great. So let's now move to you, Ola. Ola, as where you said as co-chair of the HLG, what new developments and momentums have you observed at the international level to better support data and statistics? And how do you see the Clearinghouse fitting into this landscape? Overall, I want to know, are you happy with how the international level is progressing, or you think we need to speed things up? Over to you, Ola, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and I'm really so pleased. I mean, this is actually an example, having the statistical partners within the high-level political forum, having the National Statistical Organization also speak. This is part of what we are talking about. And I really want to thank the United Nations Statistics Division, Paris 21, Open Data Watch, and the Swiss Confederation for organizing such important session. As for your question, I mean, as you may all know, that the national statistical organizations are now working twice as hard since the adoption of the 2030 agenda. And of course, even more, during the COVID-19 pandemic, to catch up with the increased demand for accurate, timely, and relevant data. And this has come to the Q&A questions. We have 2 questions, one from Sarah. What does mean the real-time, the near real-time data mean? It is more important about the increased demand, how you can really provide on time such increased demand for accurate, timely, and relevant data. So data in demand more than ever now, and this has forced data producers to find new creative and innovative ways to keep up. So there's an increased dialogue on the importance of interoperability, data stewardship, and the changing role of the National Statistical Organization. We noticed a change in the importance of partnership between all parties involved, whether we are talking about users, producers from all sectors, governments, and donors. And there's a consensus now that producing high quality data that can be safely shared across all stakeholders, including government, civil society, academics, individuals, and the private sector is key. And this comes also to the second question on the Q&A on, I think, the Kusam question, when it was asked that the government-related sources were not always the most accurate. So how did we bridge the gap? Bridging the gap is with the having more communication, more coordination, more new partners, to be involved in providing really data. So, and this comes with the data stewardship that we are developing across the globe in the statistical world. So I think reusing and combining data from both public and private sources and applying modern analytical techniques, merged data sets can cover more people, more precisely, and more frequently. So leveraging these data synergies can bring real benefits. So the Clearinghouse, for your question, is a real innovative tool, and we're really very much happy as in the statistical globe and as a high-level group for partnership on partnership and coordination and capacity building. I mean, this is for us is really very important, since every time what we are suffering in the national statistical organizations, every time is actually about financing. So the Clearinghouse is an innovative tool that will directly support our work at the high-level group on partnership, coordination, and capacity building. A huge part of our work is financing data, as the City Gap and Dubai Declaration called for more and better financing for development of data. The Clearinghouse will offer a wide picture and will be the tool to help countries, statistical organizations, donors, and development partners identify funding opportunities, bring projects to scale, advocate for support to data and statistics, and connect to new players. Thank you.
Thanks, Ola, and thanks for for so clearly stating what your needs are from the Clearinghouse, and it is a very good list of features that I think Clearinghouse can definitely provide, and really good to know that the HLG would be welcoming it. So now let's move to you, Juan Daniel, and your perspective from Colombia. Can you share your views on the value of partnership in order to utilize resources for data and statistical capacity development in a smarter way, and how the Clearinghouse can help identify and facilitate such synergies for DANE? Over to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Shade. And I have to reveal my position in the voting session. And this made me change the appraisal of the main message I wanted to share with you. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity, but I believe that partnerships are non-negotiable in the challenges that we are facing in the strengthening and the development of national statistical systems. That's why I believe, I'm convinced that the Clearinghouse is going to be a tremendous innovation in the setting of partnerships in the international and even in the national perspective, because I conceive it as a facilitation platform, yeah, and we know that this has been a tremendous, this has made a tremendous impact in the performance of several markets as transportation services, labor market. And so I believe that this kind of facilitation platforms are very important to allow the demand and supply to meet each other and to develop a strong business cases as regards as collaboration in the production of a very sound, fit for purpose statistical information. I believe that we have discussed in several scenarios that national statistical offices, we are not a monopoly anymore. So we need to develop some regulatory capabilities, but also we need to develop some coordination capabilities because sometimes in the governance of the national statistical systems, you are a bit afraid of changing the role of the director, of the manager of the national statistical system. But probably in order to foster partnerships, we need a more coordinated approach of national statistical systems, which is the experience that we would like to share with you in the Colombian case. So if we know that statistical information currently is a highly important issue to create evidence in order to illustrate public policies, which are essential in the recovery phase that we are going to get into after the pandemic of the COVID-19. We need to take into account that this set of information is a public good for our societies. And in this kind of frameworks, we know that competition could be too costly. To have several co-producers of information for the same issue or for the same set of information could be too costly to society, because instead of informing our citizens or our stakeholders, we could make some confusion because we have several sources talking about the same topic. That's why this coordination is something very important. And in this approach, under which national statistical offices, we are not the managers of the national statistical system, we need to develop some new capabilities regarding, for example, coordination and regulation. So we need to share our standards, the standards that we have developed to be applied to our search in order to make them suitable and to make them understandable by the rest of the stakeholders of the national statistical system. In Colombia, with this approach and with the data ecosystem approach that we have implemented since 2015, this approach of coordination has been very important in producing some slight changes that we would like to share with you. For example, we know currently that administrative records are a very rich source of information in order to produce official statistics. But sometimes line ministries in Colombia that they own their administrative records, they want to become the producers of the statistics from these administrative records. So in the dialogue that we have performed in the national statistical system, we have made a business case under which, let's say, let's share the administrative record, and we are going to provide you an outcome of an assessment or some recommendations in order to administrative record to be more efficient or more effective in grasping the information for the decisions that we would like to take as a line ministry. In this regard, we've been able to have a very, very sound communication with the health system and with the labor market management system that we have in Colombia. And this has allowed us to share some examples that probably you know as the per street block vulnerability index that we managed to publish, under which every citizen in Colombia was concerned about the complications or the probability of having more complications if they get the coronavirus that produced the COVID-19 disease, taking into account demographic issues and some comorbidities. So with this example, I believe that probably the coordination and the partnership is a must. We cannot choose if this is important, but probably it's very important that with platforms at the Clearinghouse, we are able to produce or to develop a strong business cases that get incentives of coordination, not only from public entities, but also from the private sector and civil organizations and civil society organizations, which are tremendously important in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Juan Daniel. Very important points that you're making on the, I really like what you said about partnership is non-negotiable, and also coordination, the important coordination, then building capacity within organizations for coordination, that it's, you know, really taking it that seriously and building it into the system, the coordination mechanism. So thank you for that. And again, we will see if the audience changed their mind on making partnership the #1 choice for smart investment. Now over to you, Emily, and thanks for being patient. Important question for you is, can you tell us about how more and better data are critical to help achieve gender equality, and how the Clearinghouse can help have an impact to address the existing challenges facing gender data financing? Over to you, Emily.
Well, thank you, Shada, and thank you so much to Paris 21 and the organizers for having this event and having this conversation, and for including civil society as well. I've learned so much. I always love these conversations that happen at HLPF, and with Dominique, that I'm a big fan of this forum. Most of you may be familiar with Data 2X. I'll just say briefly, if you're not, that we're a civil society organization and Gender Data Alliance, and we work with partners. That's also key to us, Juan Daniel. We work with partners to improve the production, the use, and the resourcing of gender data through convening, research, advocacy, and communications. And the reason we do this, just to take a minute on the case for this, is because, you know, gender data is not just a specialized data topic, but it is a core part of what quality data is And it's also a must-have for achieving gender equality. It's really just as simple as that. Without having data on women and girls, we cannot make informed policy decisions. And we also can't track if those decisions are ultimately improving lives, which, you know, at the end of the day, that's really what we all care about, right? We're not focused on having data just to have data. We're focused on how that data improves lives. And I think that's always an important, you know, frankly, human point, but also political point to make in these conversations. Of course, you know, many of us have referenced the COVID-19 pandemic. It has not only been an extreme challenge from the data perspective, but also, of course, has exacerbated existing gender inequalities and will really have some long-term negative impacts on women and girls. At the same time, overcoming it will require smart and targeted decision-making, which needs to be informed by quality gender data. Like anything else that's critical to progress collecting and using gender data, requires consistent funding, but we have new research from Open Data Watch, Shada's organization, and Data2X, which is building on Paris 21's great work, which has revealed that gender data systems are underfunded currently by roughly $450 million per year. So obviously action is needed from a few different sides to reach this investment goal and to build the kinds of robust gender data systems that we need. I think it's important to keep in mind two values to have in mind as we continue this discussion. So first, countries are at the center of financing for gender data. So we as civil society advocates, in my case, as well as other partners, including donors and multilaterals, must listen to and learn from countries. Before we act, of course, we must first understand what are countries' gender data priorities, what resources do they need, what resources do we all collectively need to work together to help achieve, to make those priorities a reality. Second, for gender equality specifically, we need, I think, to broaden our view to ensure that we are financing whole data systems and not only individual components. Women and girls' needs and opportunities and contributions are obviously not limited to only one aspect of their lives, like their reproduction or their physical safety. Each survey, of course, provides insight, but no single data source will answer every question about the lives of women and girls. So it's not enough only to fund one or two pieces. Instead, we need to consider the full gender data system and really the full data system, including everything from agricultural censuses to health administrative systems to labor force surveys. I really recognize, of course, that financing for gender data is not a simple issue. That's why we're all coming together. That's why the Clearinghouse is emerging as I think, a really important and exciting tool, because no one organization can take this on alone. I would submit that there are three key ways to work on this together. First, we've heard a lot about this today, is coordination. Second is sustained effort. And third is advocacy. I'll pause here to say what my vote was on the poll. Yusuf, I have to say, I was with you. I actually ultimately am with you that I think it's about making the business case. But when I was about to click on that, I also read, you know, two lines above on timely information on needs and results. And my conclusion was that we cannot make that business case without first having that. And so it's really both. I think ultimately it's about being able to make that case, but there's still information that we need to have in order to get us to that stage. And I think that I think that's really important to think about. What are those steps? If we're thinking politically, if we're thinking financially, right? If we're truly to make that case, then we need to make sure that we have these inputs. And I think that this is a role and part of what the Clearinghouse can help provide. I won't go into, you know, the first two of my suggestions around coordination and sustained effort, because I think we all know that it takes all of us not only coordinating, but being in this for the long term. But I'll just spend a couple of minutes or 1 minute maybe on advocacy. If we want to make progress on this, advocacy is key. I also really take to heart Yusuf's point on you know, the role of national statistical offices and thinking about all of the great representatives we've had from NSOs and the importance of independence of NSOs and not being seen as activists. I think that's a really important distinction. And I think this is where civil society comes in. You know, it's our job to advocate for this importance. It's our job to advocate for you. It's our job in part to help to build those links between producers of data and the political users of data. That's what we should be doing. And that I think is a really critical partnership here. If we're going to achieve the goals that we've all set out for ourselves and maintain momentum on the road to Bern and beyond, hopefully, it's imperative, of course, that we use advocacy to sound the drumbeat for financing. The Clearinghouse, I think, will help us do just that. It will be a very important tool for Data 2X and for others like us to advocate for increased financing for gender data in our case, as well as for addressing other challenges. I'm so pleased that Data 2X has had this opportunity to work with the Bern Network and Paris 21 and Open Data Watch to ensure that gender data is highlighted and featured in the Clearinghouse, as Jure so beautifully presented. My view and our view as Data 2X is that the Clearinghouse is structured to center countries, their priorities, and their needs. And as I said, I think that's a core value of what we should all be striving for. It provides a window into countries' core data systems, the current level of financing, and where the opportunities are for donors to fill those funding gaps. And critically, for advocates in civil society like myself, it helps give us something to point to, right, as well. We can not only contribute to it as civil society, but we can be pointing to that in our work with donors, in our work with countries, in our work with policymakers. Those insights are really critical for the coordination needed to build and maintain robust gender data systems. My last statement is that, you know, full stop, gender equality requires gender data, and gender data requires sustained and consistent financing. The Clearinghouse, I believe, will bring us one step closer to filling the gender data funding gap. Back to you, Shada.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily. Very strong case for the importance of gender data for gender equality, of course. And thanks so much for making it so clear the role of the Clearinghouse in that context. Thank you. Craig, you're our last speaker in this round of questions, and then we'll come back to the panelists with a few questions that we have seen in the chat. So Craig, the question that we have for you is, how will the Global Data Facility of the World Bank support the transformation of the national statistical data ecosystem? And how can the facility and the Clearinghouse work together to this end? Very easy question. Over to you for 5 minutes. Okay.
Thank you, Shada. And thank you, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here. And I just think today's discussion is such a great example of the good news that new commitments featuring stronger international cooperation and support for national statistical systems are starting to materialize. Although, as we've heard, additional deliberate coordinated action is needed in the immediate term to maximize these opportunities. To your question, Shada, you know, I think the most heartening progress on this front is happening where donor resources are being intentionally pooled and used to leverage each other's finances and to leverage significantly larger resources which are already available, like World Bank loans, or IDA and IPRD loans, for example, to finance data and statistics priorities. And those resources can, when pooled and leveraged intentionally, unlock an increase in domestic resources to sustain NSS transformations. As Dominique and Francesca mentioned, the World Bank is presently establishing a global umbrella trust fund for data. It's called the Global Data Facility. And it's actually being done in a response to a call to do so by the HLG 3 years ago at the previous UN World Data Forum in Dubai. The HLG emphasized the need for an innovative new funding mechanism to strengthen the capacity of national data and statistical systems and help overcome data deprivations across regions. And so the Global Data Facility is designed to do just that. So what is the Global Data Facility? Think of it as a one-stop shop to cover support, financing support for data and statistics across the full data value chain, as Shada, you and Emily have written about. It covers institutional strengthening, human resources, capacity building for NSOs and data producing agencies. It covers NSDSs and other institutional priority assessments. development and implementation of national and subnational data strategies and action plans, statistics legal institutional framework reforms, technical equipment, statistical infrastructure, ICT support, plus capacity building across non-government groups to help use data and put data to work for public goods, universities, NGOs, civil society, journalists, civic technicians, youth organizations, and more. It supports data production and dissemination, household surveys, budget, poverty surveys, closing gender data gaps, rapid surveys to track living conditions regularly, improvements to economic and price data, revisions and upgrades to national accounts, administrative data, enabling open data and more data discoverability and dissemination, using new technologies and techniques for data collection and analysis, big data, geospatial data, mobile phone data for analysis, modeling, and use, and enabling access to private sector data also for public goods. It includes strengthening for data governance and data management processes, data protections, institutions, policies, and tools, investments in M&E, rapid impact assessments, mid-implementation reviews to ensure course correction, research, heavy-duty analytics, partnerships with global centers of excellence, twinning resources, and other support to minimize fragmentation and maximize the value for every dollar spent. I'm sorry to run through this in such detail, but to give you a sense of just the robustness of the priorities that are built into the Global Data Facility, it's really important to emphasize that this is meant to be the single focal point for World Bank donor financing for data and statistics support. And how are we going to do it? And the answer is together. So that's my answer to the survey, which is we need coordination. We need to have ensured kind of deliberate and durable coordination in order to make these priorities happen. The Global Data Facility will serve as a coordination mechanism to bring donor resources together and focus them on shared priorities, and those priorities to be identified with support from the Clearinghouse. The idea is to enable scaled support for data and statistics with ex-ante participation in decision-making, prioritization, and ensuring direct collaboration with client governments to identify those priorities and put these resources to work more effectively. And again, like I said, by leveraging more resources like World Bank IDA, IBRD lending, we're talking about exponentially increasing levels of external support and unlocking increased and sustainable domestic resources for these priorities as we move forward. The framework which has guided the development of the Global Data Facility is drawn directly from the Cape Town Global Action Plan, and it features insights and recognition of new understandings of how to do this more effectively, which have come from the 2021 World Development Report that the World Bank has just published called Data for Better Lives. The good news is this is meant to launch at the coming UN World Data Forum in Bern in October. As a core member of the Bern Network, I'm very, very pleased to say that we're very much looking forward to the launch here. We're very much looking forward to continuing this connection between the Global Data Facility and the Bern Network Clearinghouse to target the support as effectively as possible. So thanks very, very much, and looking forward very much to next steps.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig. And we're so excited about bringing all these different pillars of the Clearinghouse, the Global Data Facility, and of course, the joint work with the HLG and with the UN, as Francesca mentioned, bring them all together. It's really an amazing time, and also bringing it to Bern and talking about it and socializing in Bern. So we are really short of time, but I would love to go back for one sort of a flash question to all the panelists and include Dominique and Francesca if she's still here. We have had a number of questions for concluding remarks from you, and you choose your concluding remarks, either to some of the questions that very quick response to some of the questions. One question was, if we had another channel on the Clearinghouse other than gender, what would that be? We had a question on how do we build better synergies with SDGs and with other global events and global funds. We've had a few other questions which I can't remember right now, but I wanted to basically see what your in the concluding remarks, if you could also include with the one wish that you have for the Clearinghouse as we go into the final phase of it between now and the launch of it in Bern. So let me go back and start from the end of Emily. Why don't we start from you? Any questions that you want to answer, or give us your one wish, flash 30 seconds of what you want to see in the Clearinghouse?
Sorry, Shada, I wasn't ready to get off mute. You know, I always gotta keep my wits about you with when this is happening. So, okay, Flash, 30 seconds. So I guess I'll just say my wish and connect it back to the poll. So I really wish that the Clearinghouse marks a true shift in the conversation on financing gender data, that this helps us actually get it done. And to go back to the idea of the business case, I will just say that every dollar invested in improving gender data is also a dollar invested in improving data overall, and a dollar invested in improving gender equality. And I think that's a great return on investment.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily. And thanks for making a good example of a flash conclusion. Youssef, I'm coming to you. So this is random. Be ready. 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you again. I'm coming back to the poll. A strong business case, if you get buy-in, you'll get resources, you'll get collaboration, you'll get coordination, you'll get the statistics on time, you'll get everything. Thank you very much.
Youssef, you've changed my mind. I was the one who voted for more information. Now I'm business case. Going to you, Juan Daniel, 30 seconds, your Christmas wish.
Thank you, Shada. I believe that in order to be brief, we are facing complex challenges, and sometimes complexity gets bad press, yeah, because we don't have resources, we need more technology, we need alternative methodologies, we need to provide equity-oriented statistics, which are gender sensitive, which are granular, which are fit for purpose. But I believe that all the framework that we have been set in the last years is an important foundation of how, through partnerships, we could innovate. And remember that in the innovation literature, either to go to patents or to go to business partnerships. So probably partnerships in order to foster a strengthening of national statistics system is something very important, and strong business cases are a good opportunity in order to have a project-oriented national statistics system that provide sound answers to our society stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Juan Daniel. Ola, over to you, your 30-second concluding remark and your wish for the Clearinghouse.
Well. It's so hard. But I may say, I wish the Clearinghouse, it will be the real platform to build the synergies between different partners, right, and the platform for the capacity development to get more data improvement and data development. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ola. And there are comments in the chat also about maybe the Clearinghouse could address some of the capacity issues and provide training or links to training facilities. So yes, and connecting the different networks. Craig, over to you for your 30 seconds remark.
30 seconds, okay. We need a step change in coordination and collaboration to support this agenda. And durable commitments in order to make it work. Knowing where the resources are flowing currently is an important and crucial first step. We need to get to the point where deliberate, pooled, aligned resources ex ante are coming together to get from arithmetic investments in data and statistics to exponential ones.
Bravo. Thanks, Craig. Francesca, over to you for your 30 seconds concluding remarks and your wish.
This is like in school, you don't know when your teacher is going to call you. Okay, I too changed my mind and I'm all for the business case. I think we need to really make the case for our policymakers to start thinking of data the same way as they think of hospitals and roads, and not just look for data when they need to track progress. So we haven't knocked down that wall. Who are the people today in the room? Are we still talking among ourselves, have we been able to really communicate that to our policymakers, the ones who are going to decide investments, as Yusuf said. And one wish for the Clearinghouse is for me, is to I hope that Clearinghouse is really the tool for us to learn to work together in the real way, that we really put countries at the center and we know, understand how to create and establish the partnership with countries and follow their lead and work effectively with them, for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Francesca. Beautiful. Dominique, you have the last word. You're the concluding of the concluding remarks. 30 seconds.
I think Johannes will have the last word, and I'm looking forward to it. But many things have been said. Actually, I have a wish, and this is that the Clearinghouse is the response to the major challenge we face, actually, which is the difficult coordination of our efforts for a more effective data, but including also, and Craig was mentioning, for funding of data and statistics. And actually, to be very honest, I'm pretty much confident, so it's even more than a wish. I think it's a belief that the Clearinghouse will fulfill this role. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Dominique. And thank you again for the great panel discussion. And we have had really great questions coming in that we will try to answer, Jurai. And I'm not going to do any concluding remarks. I'm just going to, because it's been such a rich discussion. And I'm going to pass it on to Jurai and Johannes for the concluding part of this webinar. Over to you, Jurai.
Thank you, Shada. What a discussion. I have nothing to add. And in the interest of time, I would indeed like to pass the floor to our concluding speaker, Johannes Jötting, who is Executive Head of Paris 21, to try to take all the rich elements of this discussion and reflect it back to us with key takeaways and also where we go from here. So Johannes, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Shada and Jurai, for an excellent moderation. Thanks to all the panelists. Now, I have to say, this is really very difficult now for me to conclude on the conclusions of such a great discussion that we had actually over 1.5 hours, and I could see that many colleagues were staying on, and that's really great. I was just thinking, maybe in terms of, for me personally, what are the 3 things that I take away from this important conversation? And I wanted to step a little bit back, if you allow me. This is a side event at the high-level political forum, right? So the first point I wanted to just reflect, and I think I'm joining Francesca here, is a high-level political forum and a discussion about financing of development data. How can that be? That's already, to some extent, for me, a success. If we think back, I mean, and this event, to have this event here today is already a success. I mean, if you look 5 years, 6 years back, we have been talking among statisticians, data interested people, and having now people like Dominic, having people, Emily and others, and more we achieve to bring together different stakeholders in this conversation about more and better data for better decisions for better lives. I think we should never forget that this is not an abstract technical decision, I think, or discussion. What we have to realize is that what Francesca mentioned, and many others of you as well, is we are living in a world, we have agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals, and we have lots of challenges. I was just reading a review of a study published in Nature, and for the first time it appears that the Amazon rainforest is producing more CO2 than it absorbs. This is for the first time we have empirical evidence based on data, based on satellite imagery and other data, that the rainforest, the Amazon, is turning from a sink of CO2 into a source of CO2. So we need to know this information now. So this is coming through data and statistics, through good quality data and statistics. And as many of you have said, this good quality data and statistics need, as Juan Daniel said, statistical information has to be turned into evidence-based policy making for hopefully better lives. And this has to be done transparent. So I just wanted to say this event today is very timely. Talking about data and financing of data is very important right now. So I really want to bring this point home. The second point is, well, we talked a lot of many challenges are out there. And I think we are very good in naming all the challenges, but I was very happy to hear as of the same time about all the nice opportunities that we also have. I think, again, that has been mentioned by many of you, the opportunities arising through innovation, digitalization, the statistical offices, Yusuf in Rwanda, Juan Daniel in Colombia, Ola in Palestine. You have been, I mean, it's amazing of how business models have been changing and are about to change through digital innovation and other types of innovation. So it is possible. And I think the other point I wanted to make here on the opportunities, and this has been also come across, is the willingness of people to change. And there is willingness at the country level, as well as the global level, to address some of the challenges linked to coordination and to sort of get better financing for our agenda. So let's use these opportunities as they arise. And this is, I think, the discussion we had here on funding and on improved funding and the opportunities we have here is very important. The last point I wanted to make is on what next. So we have the Bern Network on financing for more and better data. We have the UN World Data Forum in October in Bern. The Bern Network is an open network. So all those here listening to this conversation are invited to join this discussion. You can become member of this conversation. And I think we have, as many of you said, we have with the Clearinghouse a wonderful tool that can complement and will complement the Global Data Facility of the World Bank, and which is very much in sync with the Cape Town Action Plan. So we have all stars aligned. We have a good way forward. And I really would like you to join our conversation. There will be more things coming over the next weeks and months, and hopefully also years. And as Dominic has said, I'm even more, after having listened to all of you, I'm even more convinced that we not only can do it, but we will be doing it. And this is really great. So please join us in this, not only in this conversation, but let's help from thinking and talking about it to doing it, in particular at the country level. And I'm very glad, and I want to close with that we have, within the Clearinghouse discussions, we have a couple of countries who want to test this out at the country level, statistical offices, finance ministries, to reach improved funding through more and better information. So that is really exciting, and we are looking very much forward to assess those pilot projects. So with this, let me really conclude and thank you. First of all, thanks to all the panelists and thanks to the wonderful moderators, Shaida and Jurai. I would like to thank everybody here who was listening to this webinar. I would like to thank all the colleagues who did the work behind the scenes, my colleagues from Paris 21, but also from Open Data Watch and from our colleagues from the UN Statistical Division. Yeah, with this, let me give the floor back to Jurai for really concluding and saying a few final words, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Johannes. Thank you to all of us here today. Thank you for joining this conversation. This brings us to the close of this session, which was an incredibly rich discussion. We will post the recording online, so please do follow our social media accounts to find the link in due course. So thank you once again, and we wish you all a good day wherever you are in the world.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. See you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.